Okay, first question, numero uno. Am I having a busy 2023? A good busy 2023? Relatively busy. I wouldn't say, I think things have gotten increasingly busy over the years with the YouTube channels, with TikTok and Instagram, with streaming, so on and so forth. Things have gotten increasingly busy. And, I guess every few years or so, I try to do what I can to find new ways to be busy. But I don't want to pile myself on too much and drown myself in shit to do. I'm kind of the personality type that tends to bite off more than I can chew. And I have to kind of watch that sometimes, or else I just kind of stretch myself too thin, drive myself nuts. As far as the work ethic stuff, yeah, as I was kind of saying in the first question, I do tend to do too much or try to do too much. And I guess over the years I've kind of learned to pace myself, and I have a workflow, and I have, like employees that I didn't have before who help me with editing and uploading and back end stuff. And while the reviews and the content is still a lot, I don't really have to worry about anything other than sort of getting that done much of the time. So I think it's that, and it's also just like kind of slowly working up the intensity of what I do over the years, and just kind of getting used to the process of it, so that I just kind of go into each review or video knowing exactly what I'm trying to achieve and do. And yeah, I do burn out sometimes, and I do need a break sometimes. And when I do, it's important to sort of just like realize I have to step back and just realize I don't need to put out a million videos all at once. I could take a day, I could take a break. Sometimes when I don't have a video coming out or a review coming out that day, I'll have already put out a few Instagram reels or TikToks or a video on the Fantano channel anyway, so as long as something is coming out and something's happening, whatever review I'm working on, I could take another day to work on it, or take another day to sort of like process or write or whatever if it seems to be a lot, or I have something coming up in my personal life that's a bit distracting. Because honestly, it's better to do that than rush yourself and make something awful and make something you regret putting out, and just like essentially embarrass yourself. Obviously, whatever awful feelings I'm feeling as a result of being burnt out and doing too much, I'm gonna feel even worse if I am burnt out and I'm fucking everything up. So while the algorithms across the internet definitely reward constant engagement, sometimes it's important to just like take a second and get off the fucking hamster wheel and, just take a moment to breathe, because again, you don't want to like do or say or put out something that you end up regretting because you're not in the right mindset. Favorite fruits are probably, a good, big, heavy, fresh summer watermelon, green Granny Smith apples. I like a nice tart apple. Raisins are sick. Grapes, I like green grapes. Those are sick. Bananas, cherries, and mandarin oranges. I would say personally, my favorites are probably like hip hop and post punk right now, as far as what I get the most enjoyment out of these days. Which I think is reflected in stuff like the new Jid and the new Viagra Boys album, kind of turning up so high on my year end list this past year. As far as future interviews, I've been kind of slowing down as of late, mostly because of almost like the second question. I've been a little burnt out with some of the interviews lately, even though they have come out really great, and I'm proud of them, and I think it's become an important part of the brand. I do need to get back to it though. I haven't really planned out many interviews, though. I do have one coming up with Jesse Ware, which is an interview I've been trying to get since the last record came out. So I'm pretty happy about that, but that's going to be not live, it's going to be just taped. And, I'm trying to get back into the flow of doing it for the rest of this year, maybe starting things back up in the summer, late spring. As far as some of my favorite interviews, some of the most revealing or revelatory or just fun to do. I had a really good time talking with, Lil Nas X, the Danny Brown interview, Ravenna, Hunt Hendricks of Liturgy. I thought was really an interesting conversation. The Alchemist was great, as you sort of mentioned, Little Sims as well. And also a Sebastian of Viagra Boys, and finally probably the insane conversation that we had with Black Midi, where they sort of like randomly broke into song a few times. Rap goats, rap goats, rap goats. Probably, probably some guys like Andre 3000 or Ghostface Killa, Kendrick Lamar, JPEG Mafia, and Danny. But yeah, I mean, as far as like old school classic stuff, probably like Andre or Ghost. I mean, I think my thoughts and my opinions on the rappers of the modern era, who I think are also amazing and fantastic and are putting out modern classics in their own right. But you guys know how I feel about those artists. You've seen the scores, you get it. But I mean, as far as like old school stuff, I do go crazy for some Ghost and Andre. And also MF Doom. Yeah, I would say like MF Doom, Ghost, Andre. It's kind of it's a tight race between those three. As far as more underground groups and artists, I mean, he did just have his Def Jam debut, but I think the Navy Blue record could use some more attention. And there's that artist Jimmy, who I reviewed recently as well, who dropped that record Ghetto Land. He just put out a new one too, some of which sounds pretty interesting from what I've heard. But yeah, I do try to keep my ear to less mainstream stuff. It is kind of hard sometimes to sort of, especially these days, like champion yourself as like, yeah, I'm into the most obscure, underground, least well-known everything because, the internet makes it so easy for people to just kind of like access, everything that's out there so quickly. So, being first or being super early can be kind of tough sometimes. Not that that is the be all end all, I'm just sort of saying that, these artists that I've just recommended, they do have, people are aware of what they do and they do have fans, but I think they could definitely use more. They're obviously not at that level of Drake popularity. But I think they could use some more attention given the quality of the work that they're putting out. Most anticipated album right now, I mean, I guess personally would be Death Grips because they've obviously been doing merch, talking about touring and live performances, that sort of thing, getting ramped back up as far as promotion. And that means a new album's got to be on the way. So when's that going to happen? We got to hear that. As far as question 11, yeah, I'm aware of those artists because, I mean, as you have sort of observed in, covering Griselda generally, they tend to cross over a lot, they collaborate a lot. They, work on stuff together. They have a lot of material together. So, I'm aware of them. But, I have homed in and listened to their recent work, and I guess I just didn't really have super strong opinions or thoughts on it. And it is kind of hard at the end of the day to get a balance of a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? Because I do try to cover as many genres as possible. And I guess there's some ups and downs to that. There's positives and negatives. The negatives being that there are artists that I end up kind of, you know, overlooking in a sense. Not to say that I have completely ignored the work of those you've just listed out. I don't, and I haven't. It's just a matter of like feeling like I don't really have, strong feelings on their work. I don't really have a whole lot to say. And if I, had a gun to my head and I was forced to do a review, it would probably be, a pretty road sort of take on whatever it is that they're doing. That's not to say that they're bad or awful or that their work's not worth listening to or worth attention, because obviously they have fans and people who really love and enjoy their stuff. But, week to week, I do, as I was saying earlier, I have to find kind of a balance between whatever the most major releases of that week are and sort of try to splice that with whatever albums or projects I personally have, investment in, or I feel like, in terms of like, just as a fan, I'm just like really passionate about this artist, that artist. I try to mix it between what are people like really hoping for and demanding that I review, and what am I also just kind of excited about on a personal level. And oftentimes there's a lot of overlap between that. Like, obviously, the Danny and Peggy record, for example, is a record I'm really excited about, and my fans are really excited to see me review. But there are a lot of records that I'm excited to review and I think are really awesome, and yet I get almost, no demand to review them, like the new Kara Jackson record that I'm about to put out a review for, which is a really beautiful and awesome singer-songwriter record. I'm about to review the new Frost Children album as well, which I think is also a really, fantastic kind of fusion of experimental pop and left field pop, as well as, just like Y2K era dance music. But yeah, I really have to kind of give myself time to review those artists that I think are doing something interesting and special. Because if all I'm doing is like feeding myself albums, I don't really think, just like, mainstream shit that's like super basic, not that interesting, not a whole lot to analyze, discuss, dive into. If all I'm doing is just feeding myself that stuff all day, it gets pretty tiresome and soul sucking, which I would say is kind of another way in which I'm able to not burn myself out too fast, because I don't overexpose myself to stuff that I just don't really think is all that, gratifying, or, all that, the word I'm looking for is, I guess, replenishing in a way. Maybe fulfilling is kind of the word that I want to throw out there. And a bad album, doesn't necessarily have to be like not fulfilling as far as like a review or a content experience. There are lots of records that I think are just okay or are disappointing, but, as like an act of criticism, it's still, I would say, I guess, a worthwhile endeavor to do it and get it done. I would say like the new Metallica is kind of an example. But there are some records that are just like truly so, I'll say, undercooked and half-assed that there's like almost nothing really to kind of go over. And, on top of it, sometimes they tend to be so bloated and boring and long. So I do try to just like protect my mental by not torturing myself with that kind of shit over and over and over and over, and make sure that throughout the week I am able to kind of sustain myself off of releases I actually do enjoy pulling apart and do enjoy listening to. Final thoughts. Thank you very much for the interview. Thank you very much to anybody, taking in this interview. Thank you very much to anybody watching my videos. You know where to find me: on YouTube, on Twitch, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TheNeedleDrop.com. I'm everywhere. I'm anywhere. And I hope everyone's having a good day. You're the best.